Here we go. Here we go.
All right.
It's saying going live. We're live, apparently.
Oh. Yeah.
There's always a little bit of delay, I think, on between YouTube and Zoom. So probably.
I love it. All of our videos will start with us going, "Are we live? Hello? Hello? Is this thing on? Hello?"
Secretly, we're all technologically impaired.
It's natural.
Working in the tech industry, that's where we need to be.
Right. Well, we'll get started nice and quickly. Hello, welcome to 9 out of 10 testers. My name's Chris Armstrong. My name's nicely on the screen for you to be able to see that. Joined by 4 very lovely people today, and we're going to be speaking about personal professional development. We're just going to introduce ourselves quickly, but before we do, please like, subscribe, do the bell so you don't miss us again in the future. Find us on LinkedIn, find us on Twitter, 9 out of 10 testers. So to introduce ourselves, I thought we'll say hello, our names, where we're from, what we do, and then maybe if we can think about what was the first bit of professional development we can ever remember doing at work. Interesting. Maybe we'll start off with Veerle.
Oh my. Well, my name is Veerle Verhagen. Unfortunately, I forgot to put my last name on my tab, but whatever. I'm currently a software tester with Riskit from the Netherlands. And my first bit of personal development I ever did at work. Well, I suppose I could list out all of my shitey jobs that I had in the past, but that's not really relevant at this point. I actually started work at Riskit, but I'm still working, and it is a consultancy. So what they do, what we specialize in, is picking people from the streets, giving them an education in testing, and then throwing them out in the real world. So I think before I actually even did any work for Riskit, I was already getting trained, which is quite good.
Nice. Who's next?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, should I pass
next round
on?
is Shey. Let's pass it around nicely, as the stream says. Shey.
All right. Hey, I'm Shey Crompton. I am Senior Quality Engineer at Prima Assicurazioni. I practice that in the Muret 3 times every day. Let's see. So first, personal development I did at work. You can tell we prepared for this, by the way. It's amazing the preparation that goes on. You know what? I think the first bit of training I did was about 15 years into my career when I did Institute of Leadership and Management course. Prior to that, I'd never really done any formal training. So there you go.
That's stunning.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Wild.
Yeah, well, let's move on. Sanne.
Yeah, so Sanne Visser, I'm with Capgemini in the Netherlands, currently working as a project manager, actually, since the past 3 months. And my first formal training was the way I actually became a software tester, one of those traineeships that also made you pay into the system and then kind of sort of ease out with the training fees. And that's how I got started.
Nice. Hanna.
Yes, hello, my name is Hanna, and I work as a quality catalyst at Devoteam Creative Tech in Sweden. And my first personal development at work was actually my first job, where they threw us into a 3-month-long class in how to be a tester, including the ISTQB, which I know is debated, so let's not go into that subject. That could be run all on its own.
That just leaves you, Chris.
Yeah. That's my own question then. So I'm Chris Armstrong. I'm a product quality strategy manager at Provar. I live in the south of Wales, and my house is still standing after the storm, which is tremendous. Probably the first professional development I did was a tool vendors certification program for their basics program to be able to use an automation tool. And it was very much a point and click and tick this box and everything. Everybody would be very happy with that sort of thing.
Doesn't sound very inspiring, does it?
It didn't know. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't really use the tool thereafter. It wasn't very useful. So, so it's an interesting thing, because I think we want to talk about what is useful in professional development. So maybe a good follow-on from that is, did you actually know that this sort of thing was available in your workplace where you were, or were you just told to go somewhere? Did you get to choose?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good one. I think because I was in such a formal traineeship program, the first year and a half were completely mapped out, including follow-up trainings on that first 6 weeks that was just full-time. And as such, I came to expect it in each following job, that those plans would just be there, and turns out they're not. So yeah, I did have the expectation. How about you?
Actually, sorry, do you mean Chris, or can I just butt in?
You butt in, because that's what you do. Go
That's
on.
what
Go
I
on.
do. I'm so sorry.
It's about time. Let's go freeform.
Let's go. Okay, I actually completely recognize this, because like I said, I started working with a consultancy, and so their whole business is to try and train the best people out there, so that you can always like say, we have the best people out there. So the first, let's say, year of my career, that was it. Like, I was fed training after training. They were like, do whatever you want. Do you want this training? Do you want that training? Like, sometimes not even like that. It was like, I booked you a training. Go, it's tomorrow. And it was fucking fantastic. And then, sorry, I shouldn't swear. And then, yeah, too late. And that was with Risk It. And then I took a little break with a different company, because I'd started working there, and they really wanted to keep me. So I was like, all right, fine. So I started working there, and they weren't really up for personal development at all. And so sometimes I'd ask, like, hey, can we go to a conference? Can I do this? Can I go to, even if it wasn't a paid thing, even if sometimes you go for free, and I'd be like, hey, can I go to this thing? It's during work hours. And they were like, well, yeah, sure, if you take a day off. I was like, but it's work stuff. And they were like, no, it's not. Work stuff is working here. And it was,
mate.
yeah, and it was but
Yeah.
it's like, it's mad how different companies can be in that. Like, the first one was pure, like, you have to do all these trainings. If you're not motivated to do trainings, why would you want to work here? And then the second one was like, what's a training?
That is
Yeah.
a massive difference, though, isn't it? I mean, at the same time, when they don't expect you to do that type of training on work time, it's like, when do they expect it, or did they just not expect it at all in that case? Because that would scare me.
Oh my God. And it scares you so much, because I'm not going to name the company, but they're in a very serious business. They're in a business where you would want people to be the very best that they can. And so, yeah, it was weird. I don't think they really cared much about whether people were developing or not. I think they were like, well, if you can do the job you're doing now, then that's good enough, isn't it?
But
Yeah, that's scary.
that's such a narrow-minded way to look. Is if you can do the job now, you're fine. But
I know,
for
right?
companies, so companies go, oh, we've got our big 3 to 5 year plan and all the rest of it, and it's like, but our guys are the best now. But what happens in 3 years? What happens in 5 years? Why aren't you training for 3 or 5 years time?
And
It's
you
all
know
very
what?
well saying you can do it now, but what's the next
Yeah.
big thing?
And you know what the next big thing is? Everybody leaves. And that's what happened. I left,
Yeah.
everybody else, like at some point, everybody just leaves, because you're like, I'm so bored with doing the same job that I can
Yeah.
do well, apparently well enough to never develop.
That's it.
Yeah.
You look
Yeah.
into the future, and it's like you see nothing. There's a great expanse of nothing. So what are you going to do? Well, the only way to get to challenge myself is to leave, or and get training. And so you got to do that. So
Interestingly, we did set out a poll on LinkedIn about this, and we are all very much of the same mind that, this is a part of your job and you should get time and money to do this. But we had a whole whopping 17% people say that, professional development, personal development should be on your own time. So there is a large group out there, unlike us, apparently.
Yeah.
So where are these people coming from?
That's ridiculous, man. I think if you are a conscientious person within your craft, you should be looking to improve yourself, and possibly even outside of work hours. However, if you are a conscientious company and care about your workforce and care about being at the top of your game, how many companies claim to be the top 10% employer, or the top employer, or we are an amazing employer, and yet when you ask the people who work there, there's no training, no formal training, or no conferences. They don't try to develop their workforce. And I think developing your workforce should be partially within your working time. I mean, the infamous or rather famous 3M and Google's 20% time is dedicated towards personal projects and learning or personal development.
Although
that is essential.
I do have a complaint about that 70-30-20 rule. Because we're ranting anyway, because I got that one back a lot in the comments as well. Well, half of your learning should be on your job, 30% should be formal trainings that you do, and then 20% of that should be learning you do in your personal time for your job. And it's like, how are you cutting these percentages so perfectly? First of all, like learning on the job for 50%. It's like, well, this meeting, I learned this, but next meeting, I'm just going to sit back and be like just another person body in the room. It's so arbitrary to do these percentages. Like, I get it when it comes to cutting up a week or a month in terms of days and hours available. But other than that, it's like the 70-30-20 rule just seems like such a pile of crock, basically. I mean, that's not real life.
Yeah, I think personally, I mean, I'm hoping at least that the people who did answer the poll saying that it should be on your own time, I'm hoping it could be people that have only been at companies where it is like that and haven't actually experienced getting to do it on work hours, because I think it's easy to get to think that this is something that you should do on your own time. If you've been in a company where you get to do it on work hours, it's probably going to be hard to go back to doing it on your own time.
Or here's a theory. Maybe that 17% of people are the managers of these companies that don't give any time for trainings.
Sneaking in, trying to influence the poll.
Yeah. we don't want these people to get ideas.
There is the other idea, I suppose, that some people are working in places where it isn't possible, like we say, but also maybe people want to do things that are for their own personal benefit,
right.
and that maybe that wouldn't be like there's ambition, but there's also side projects that maybe we can't get involved in, or maybe you want to collaborate with people outside of your company, like we are doing right now. Some companies may be more keen for that sort of thing to happen than others, and I don't know. In your experience, when you've been doing projects like this or podcasts or whatever, is that stuff that you've been able to do on your work time, or have you had to do it in your own?
This is going to be annoying, but it's again, it depends. Like we put in the survey, we never give testers the option of it depends.
How many people voted it depends?
Almost everybody. Like
the other 83%.
Yes, pretty much.
Of course.
They're testers, and I think Dennis the boy pointed out you should never put out a poll to testers with the option it depends. It's clickbait. Thanks for that comment, by the way. It happens. I mean, some ideas or some professional projects are how would I say, so young, so in the germination stage that they're not ready for the public eye of a company yet. And at that point, I kind of keep them to myself and let them grow a bit more. So those are projects that I would not immediately share or work on in office hours until they get a little bit more like, okay, that's where I'm going kind of direction.
So is that would that be a project to do with your company's within your company's remit? Because obviously, I'm sure pretty much all of us have contracts where if you're working on a project that has nothing to do with your company, you shouldn't be doing it in office hours. So so there's an obvious one there. But you're learning skills. You've got to learn some sort of skills to do that project, be it like better your documentation or learn a bit of coding or a bit of automation testing or scripting, like Veerle learned recently a little bit of sort of scripting to help move things along. Those are all personal development aspects which then enhance your job. So companies who say, oh, you can only do learning outside of work hours, what the hell? Because I have a job to do, and do you mean like I can't learn a bit of scripting which will help you because I will be more efficient in my job, but I have to go home and I've got children and I've got dinner and I've got everything to do, and then I have to sit down and do work when my brain's not or do learning when my brain's not there. That I think is such a closed-minded way to be. You've got to, as a company, want your people to learn, and the only way to instill that kind of learning is lead by example. Give them the time, give people the time to be able to figure out how to learn. The assumption that everybody has all the time in the world at home, like when you were single and you just left university and shall I go to the pub or shall I do 4 hours of learning tonight? What the hell? That's not how real life is for most people.
Even if you are like me, single, young, and just out of uni, then going to the pub for 4 hours is so tempting. So
hell yeah.
you can't
sit in front of this computer. What?
You can't like, even regardless, I think, of what somebody's home situation is like. Even if you don't have kids, I don't think it should be expected that you take on all of your learning in your own time. So I'm always a fan of a nice little balance. So obviously, I am really interested in the craft of testing. So I'm also really interested in becoming a better tester. So even if I don't actively seek it out, like I'll quite often be maybe watching a talk at night on YouTube or reading articles about testing. And like, it's almost stronger than I am. So in that sense, I'm like, it's fine, because there's a balance. I do some things during work hours and I do a lot of things outside of work hours as well. But I always feel like, regardless of somebody's home situation or personal situation, like there shouldn't be the assumption like, oh, you can probably make time for it, because maybe you can't, or maybe you don't really want to.
Yeah. I'm always reminded of this quote. I think it was by Atul Gawande, and I've shared it with you before, Veerle, which is like, a professional is somebody that is willing to take responsibility for continuously improving upon their profession. And that's what kind of makes things also be termed. He, as a surgeon, is talking about the medical world, but I think the point stands. When it comes to personal development, do you feel you are a professional? And if so, you have a responsibility of learning, regardless of what your company lets you do, right?
And now I would like to pose an interesting question, because I'm really curious what your opinions are. To what extent is it just your responsibility or just your employer's responsibility, or should there be a balance in this as well? What do you think?
You mean responsibility in terms of time, or do you mean in terms of cost, or what it is you're actually spending your time doing?
Yes, exactly that. So deciding what is important for you at this stage in your career to learn, like who should decide that? Who should have an opinion on that?
I think it should be a bit of a joint effort. I mean, surely it's a good way for you. Well, it's a good thing for you as an employee to show that you have an interest to actually develop. Because I'm hoping at least that's what employers want, like people who want to develop, like.
I'm going to disagree, because as a bit of a lone wolf / rebel, even within my company, if I'm not interested in a developmental area, you cannot move me in that direction in any way, shape, or form. I'm sure it's a developed stubbornness or a personality trait. But if you tell me do this, then my immediate reaction is no, regardless of if it's in my interest.
Does it depend on like how, I mean, not obviously you shouldn't force people, but like if someone said, yes, you could go this path or this path, I mean, helping people to like, that are maybe not as driven to seek out what they should do, to like, I think you could do maybe this or maybe that, just to push people a little bit.
Really backfires in my case. I've had managers try and do it this way, and not in an unfriendly way. And I'm sure this is personality coming into this, but any kind of try and pull me in any direction, and I immediately step on the brakes. And it's so instinctual, it's almost ridiculous. And it is not necessarily helpful, but like, you will not move me on those points if it's not internally motivated.
You learn to live with it eventually.
Exactly. It's like any like compulsory trainings as well. You know, I sit through them, but I do not pay attention to them. I'm just a stubborn ass, basically.
Yeah, I think I'm going to vote we keep compulsory training out of this discussion, because then I could get even more ranty.
Yes, then we'll get really annoyed.
Compulsory training and the quality of it and all the rest of it. That's just don't get me started. But I think so. Like, one of the things I think, Hanna, you mentioned was one of your first formal training on the job was the ISTQB. And you know what I said? My first formal training was Institute of Leadership and Management stuff. It was actually the ISTQB, and I was working at a consultancy at the time. So again, we have all these qualified people, and they're the best people in the world, and they're all ISTQB qualified. So I had to do that, and I didn't like it. I didn't believe in it. It wasn't one of the things I wanted to do, but I did it because it was expected, because of I believed in the consultancy and the company I was with, and did that. However, I do see where you're coming from, Sanne, where it's like, if somebody goes, right, you have to become an Excel expert, and you're going like, I don't want to do that, but you have to be the most expert, so you have to do this, and you're not gonna do it. I think at the same time, there needs to be a little bit of a give and take of, like, if I want to do a psychology course, it's nothing to do with software testing, but the company should understand that having somebody who's learning something that they'll come back with different ideas from different walks of life and sectors is also relevant. I mean, it's one of the things that Mike Bolton said to me a long time ago. It's like, hey, I read testing books. I also read psychology books. I also read fiction books and non-fiction books and things like that, and biographies, because what that does is give me all these different ideas to take into my job.
Yeah, and I think that's where the it depends comes in, and the give and take as well. Yes, I don't like being told which way to go or even pulled slightly in any direction, but there is absolutely a conversation that happens when talking about the personal development that I do want to do. I do talk with my company about them, and we have a discussion very fairly in terms of what does and doesn't fit. And then that I think is fine, because there is a limited set of time and budget in almost, well, let me speak for myself. At Capgemini, there is just a very clear budget and set time for it. It's generally, if it's outside of the client's billable hours, you can train as much as you like. And I think that's lovely. But at the same time, if you do take hours away from a client, there's only so much you can do with that. So that discussion happens early on. And I've noticed, if you have them well, and you are indeed clear about, this psychology degree is going to get me to this point for this company, it generally goes very well.
This lead into a conversation about tying objectives to personal development, and how we prove that our personal development has benefited our company.
Ooh.
There's awfully quiet. I've literally never had to do this.
I've had to do that, and I'm not a fan.
What happened?
I mean, we got to set up like goals for the year, but then we kind of were in charge of making it happen. And it's like, well, if you're going to push me towards a goal, at least give me the needs, because it was basically do it outside of work hours. And it's like, well, if you want me to get here, and it was like this sort of thing with that we got bonus based on if we retrieved our goals, and it was, the previous company, not a fan.
It gives such a sort of a gold star mentality to things, where you get rewarded for completing a smart personal development goal. It can work, but it will work for the 1%ers in your company who are in the privileged situation, like we just mentioned, where personal time is available for these things. And if that's the kind of culture you want to build, then yeah, sure, there's plenty of companies that work that way, and then we'll reward the person that puts in that time, and they'll get the bonus, and they'll get the credits for the learning and have done the learning. And you just start creating these massive differences. That's where diversity and inclusion then becomes a problem, isn't it? Because you're basically, you're probably rewarding the single white male guy, likely. So that's
Yeah.
worrisome.
Yeah, it doesn't give much work-life balance for the people that actually have more stuff going on. It does. Yeah, if you're just sat at home and don't like a bit of a loner, then it might work. But it's not very fair to like punish people for having a life outside of work.
But can you make agreements in terms of, and I do this personally, by the way, even when I don't talk to my manager, which benchmarks are there that I can set to show that I'm reaching a goal? And I use these all the time, where it's like, well, here's a milestone, here's a benchmark, here's somebody I can compare myself to, or get some feedback from somebody to let me know where I am on this path. So can you measure stuff and show progress? I think that is possible. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I think, having learning goals where you're like Hanna said, where you're expected to be completely outside of work time, then yeah, not cool. I think that's a completely wrong way to approach learning within an organization. However, having something like you say, Sanne, with some milestones that are, I have learning goals, which is I want to have this qualification or reach this milestone, and you're tasked with doing it, and you have to get there hell or high water. So it's use some time, some work time, use some outside of work time. There is an allowance for that. Great, but to just sort of go, hey, here's a bar, you need to be able to jump over it by June.
That's not helpful.
Not really going to work.
Even damaging, I think, like I said before, because that tends to really put people back that don't have the privilege to do that and reach the bar. And that's where we get into trouble, I think, with systems like that, where you just set a standard or put a gold star in place and here, just find a way to reach it. It's never fair when it's put that way.
But also, like, companies don't really have a clue quite often don't have a clue on how people learn. And this is one of the big things that I find difficult with companies who go, hey, look, let's do learning goals, or we want all of our people to be continual learners, or we want to make resources available to them. And they'll go and buy a Pluralsight license or a LinkedIn learning license and go, hey, everybody, you can now do all the learning you want. Yay. Now,
hang on.
It was only when I started doing the Ministry of Testing Essentials stuff that I started to understand how there were different ways people learned. And it was Dan Ashby and Mark Wintringham who sort of gave me this information. It was like, some people like to learn by being in a workshop and hands-on and learning and having somebody guide them along. Other people would like to read a book. Other people want to watch a video and not interact with it. Other people want to watch the video and play along at home. There are so many different ways of learning. Now, if you as an HR department are responsible for the continual development of your workforce and you care about it, just going and buying LinkedIn Learning or bloody Pluralsight is so closed-minded as to be damaging. Pluralsight, it's technically minded. So what would a finance guy care about it? There's nothing. LinkedIn Learning is perhaps one of the more comprehensive area sort of learning platforms out there. But I like going to conferences and I come back fired up and I want to do all the things and learn all the things. But
I know, right?
Why just give me LinkedIn Learning and go, hey, we pay 300 quid a year for that. That's your learning, boy. Go.
Yeah, but the trouble that you're mentioning is when they feel they're done after doing that. Like, it is absolutely wonderful if your company has decided to hand out Ministry of Testing licenses, Pluralsight, make it available, and have some time and budget to do those things. That's perfect. Like, have the mix, have it available. But if the only thing you've done is bought that license and given it to your people, that just is never enough. I mean,
no.
That then relies on people self-starting.
Yeah.
Can I launch into story time for a minute?
Yes.
Go on. Story time. Hang on, let me
We're
get
hitting that.
cup
We're
of
hitting
coffee.
the half
All right.
hour mark anyway. I'm going to shake everybody up a bit.
Yeah.
Right. So the previously mentioned company that I'm not going to name by name, that wasn't really interested in personal development. They did pretend that they were interested in personal development because at some point this became a big thing, and like the people, that was we, the people, got a little bit annoyed. Like, we want personal development, we want training, we want to develop ourselves, and they were like, right, we're on it. And so what they did was they went to one of these like Dutch learning institutes for basically working people that do like online trainings, and they were like, yeah, we bought a license to the entire library of trainings. You can pick whatever you like, you can do it during work hours, like have fun, get cracking. And so I did. I was like, cool, my whole team is like working on this whole Java thing, and I would like to understand better what Java is and how it works. So I was like, I'll do the Java development course. And so I did, and it was essentially, I don't know, I think it was like 10 chapters or something of them just shouting Java at you, basically just showing you screenshots of code and not explaining how it works, just saying what it did. And I'm like, how is that helpful? How is that even helpful? And then the assignments were basically like, copy paste this into an IDE. I had to go to my colleagues like, what IDE you guys are using, because I don't really know how any of this works. So they were like, copy this into an IDE and then fill in the blanks. And I was like, I didn't even realize there were blanks in there because you're not explaining anything. It was wild.
Oh, yeah.
And then like, to make it more fun, you know how they add stock photos into courses. And so one of the stock photos was like, you know, the little blocks for babies with letters on them, spelling out JavaScript. I was like, this is made by a person who doesn't even know what Java is, and I'm meant to learn Java by this. Are you insane? And so I actually wrote to HR going like, by the way, I don't know how much money you spent on this, but I'm kind of guessing you want to get a refund because this is subpar, because I'm not swearing today. Yeah, this is absolute rubbish. It was so bad. And then at the same company, at some point, I could get, for some reason that is too long-winded to explain, I could go to Agile testing days because somebody had a ticket that I could have. And I was like, can I please go to Agile testing days? And they were like, well, are you going to have to take a holiday for it? I was like, can I please have those days off? So they were like, not too short notice.
Oh, yeah. And then like Janis in our chat is saying, that's the point where you start planning to leave, isn't it? I mean, it is such a deal breaker when you hit this wall. I mean, this is a particularly emotional story though.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm going to calm down now. But yeah, I actually do think that was pretty much exactly the point that I decided I must leave. I have to get out of here because I'm going nowhere. If this is the company I'm working for, then this is the level I'm at, and it's never going to get better.
Exactly.
Right, that was it. Story time's over.
But it's disheartening, isn't it? When you all of a sudden realize that one of the major things you need is never going to be given to you by your company. This willingness to grow, you know, we've all come together because we're very engaged with our craft, with our careers, with, you know, leadership and all the other things around. And so I want a company that'll help me to grow in all of those areas that I'm interested in. And all of a sudden you get told that ain't happening. We expect you to be an automaton and do the job that you have this job. This is your job spec. Fulfill these, and we're going to give you your money every month. But there's nothing else.
That shuts you down as a person.
Oh man,
that's why you leave, isn't it? I mean, it's not just that you're not growing anymore. It's just like that's identity. And so much as well. Yeah, I agree. But the thing about the content and quality, Veerle, to get back to your training on one of those sites, I mean, that's true for all of these online platforms, by the way. Like you can even be on Plural site and hit a course where you're just like, wow, somebody put that on here and thought this was a good course. That there's still curation is such an underrated skill when it comes to learning. It's like... Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why I raised the point earlier about like who is responsible for setting out your learning path, because I felt in the beginning of my career like people have ideas about what you need to learn, like you need to get the basics, you need to get a bit of this, you need to get your agile, your scrum certificates and all. And then at some point I feel that you reach a certain level of skill, I would say, where yes, as a professional, you do have to take that responsibility, but I sometimes find it quite hard to know what sort of skills will benefit me in the next stage of my career. So that's why I'm like, I would really like that to be a shared responsibility. And sometimes I feel like I don't really know what I'm doing or where I'm going. So I would like to have somebody to help me with that.
Yeah.
And I think
Because
when you say like
there's-
curating, oh, sorry.
So I was going to say that's pretty much leads a little bit into what Deborah's said in the chat.
Yeah, I saw that actually.
It said things that can be challenging. Management haven't even done the role or know enough about to recommend specifics other than that. Learn more, be better. Here's money, time, and stuff. And you're right. It's quite hard to work out what is it that I should do, and if we are responsible for helping other people, how do we tell them to do stuff? Because we are different. So because I like going to a conference and learning that way doesn't mean that other folk around me are going to think the same way and want to experience the same things. So how can we have those conversations? How can we find out new ways, better ways, more applicable ways to learn things? Where can we go to find that out?
We've hit on communities of practice. This is why they are born, in essence, why they exist. Because at some point there will be enough people sitting around like, what do? I want to do this thing. And somebody, usually people like us, I think, will be like, I'm going to go shout this out and get a bunch of people and we're going to do this together and we'll figure it out. And that's how a lot of learning groups will form, and then communities of practice will form. I think that's where that comes from. It's like, there's no thing that exists to do this, so let's make it and do it together.
I think
also, if you're in a smaller company and you're, say, a lone tester or something like that, that's the communities of practice thing may be a difficult thing to encounter, and that's where I think, say, attempting to be engaged with your craft, with your community, within your chosen career is important. But also, I think that puts a lot of the onus on HR becoming a bit of a coach towards you, a career coach, in that, or your manager. So as a leader, if I'm managing someone, part of that is to help coach them through their career. So it's the kind of thing of like, okay, where do you want to go? These are some options as well. Okay, what do you like? Okay, I want to do programming. Okay, we have programmers here. Do you want to be one of them? Okay, this is how to get to that point. Is that something you'd like to do? Those it's down to the leadership and the HR department to try and coach that out of you, those ideas, I think, as well, if you don't have the community of practice to help push you along.
Yeah, and there's a huge advantage of kind of the pandemic now, whereby a lot of these have become so much more accessible just straight across the internet. And I think there's an opportunity there for the management that don't have the specifics of a role to encourage people towards finding their groups. I mean, if there's one thing we've learned over the past 2 years, it's that there's a little group out there for everybody in terms of direction. Even if you are the only one in your team in a role, there is a group out there somewhere. They might be on Facebook, they might be in the Ministry of Testing Slack, but somebody out there is doing what you want to learn. And that's then the manager's role to encourage how to search for those communities. And I think that you can have as a responsibility as HR or management. At least I feel it should be.
Fair. Sanne, you actually triggered me when you said pandemic, because I want to know if any of you have noticed a difference in sort of the amount of personal development you're undertaking before and after COVID.
I think I have about the same. However, it's been really different. My company's really oriented around having sharing sessions and sharing days. of course, they have been remote. They are normally in person, and that has been a challenge, as obviously all conferences and everything, doing things remotely, it's not as energizing.
Fun.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, we rely on each other to share things, and it's tougher to share things remotely because you don't get the energy back, or it doesn't feel as good to do something remotely as it does in person.
Yeah, I've heard some people say that they don't mind at all, but like for me, that experience is the same. Like I remember when you do online stuff, you're kind of like, okay, yeah, this is fun. But at the same time, it's tiring. Like it gives energy, but it takes a lot of energy as well. Whereas last November when I was at Agile Testing Days, like I went there a wreck and I came back like a nuclear blast. It was wild. For me,
and sharing that, I think in the past 2 years, just to be really honest, I'm an incredibly energetic person most days, but there were so many months and even sometimes whole years in that period where the energy levels were so low. Honestly, there was no room for anything other than just surviving. I think a quote I remember someone making is just remember, you're not working at home. You're working in a pandemic and you're making stuff just get done while dealing with all of this uncertainty and just general malaise of everything being shit. And as such, there were times where it's like, no, I can't. There is no more to give. And I am already thankful and sometimes couldn't even do the job. And that just meant personal development was out, basically. So concluding that, it ebbs and flows, I think always, but it became extremely ups and downs in the pandemic even more. Mm-hmm. And honestly, Zoom fatigue is very real, let's be honest.
Oh, yeah.
But very happy to be here today, nonetheless.
Yes, exactly.
Big props to Zoom for letting us host on that. But yeah, I found it really tiring. I think, if anything, I've had more opportunities to attend conferences and meetups than I would have done in an office-based job. But it's more tiring. And for me, it's a bit less stimulating unless I've got that engaging. And that's been really difficult to get around, because I'm in the same environment as I am when I'm working, which I'm not when I'm at a conference or a course or a workshop or stuff. I'm interacting with people. It can be quite difficult. I think we've all been in workshops, virtual workshops, when people have had cameras off and haven't been engaging in chats or haven't been talking in small groups. And that's really hard, and things are getting better. But I still desperately miss that in-person energizing thing as well. And that's specifically around that kind of learning and engaging. But I'm so tired of just looking at screens all the time. And so
it's had an impact on all levels, I think, this pandemic. But yeah, shall we move on to the next topic, maybe?
Let's not go on about Zoom fatigue and all that.
There's lots and lots. So let's go on to the next one. How about this? There is a budget for training, but we don't know what it is. How do we get that magical budget? What is this thing?
I'm just going to get on another soapbox here.
Yes, go on. Do it.
Training budgets. If you want to see the biggest rant of the day, look now, because training budgets are ridiculous. Because you have companies that think they can put a little bit of money aside, and that'll fulfill their training thing. Is just ridiculous. The training budget should be unlimited, because you are, as a company, conscientious company, caring about how your workforce improves. And the way to improve, as I've said before, is about learning. And learning is different in everybody. I like going to conferences because I like the interaction with people and I like the workshops and things. That costs money. If you give me £1,000 a year, which sounds like a lot of money to me because it's a significant percentage of my annual income, then I go to a conference and it costs me £600, including travel and everything like that, and the ticket, which is pretty much like par for the course unless you're going to some of the bigger conferences, which could be £1,000, £2,000, right? So if I've got a like a £1,500 budget, and it costs me the majority of the £1,000 to go to this one conference, and then I've got like 600 quid left, and somebody goes, "Hey, Shey, we'd love you to get a information security qualification," and I go, "Yeah, cool, all right, I'll look it up." It costs £700. They go, "Oh, you don't have enough budget left." Oh well, until next year then. What's that look like? I mean, come on. Seriously, you want me to become, qualified in something and to better you, and you can brag about it. If you're a consultancy, you can brag about it. In your own company, you can brag about it. But because I've used up most of my budget, it'll have to wait another year to become more useful to you, the company.
Yeah.
There we go. Rant over. I'm going to drop my mic.
That being said, you should know how your company does financially deal with the whole budgets. I mean, it is useful to have the context. I'm not saying it's right to just have a set amount every year and lose it. I agree, Shey, that sucks. Shouldn't do it. But it is a conversation for, I'll stick to myself. So there is a number that I know I need to have billable hours for a client. I am a consultant. This is how my company makes a profit. And it is useful to know where that number is at. Is it at 80%? Is it at 90%? How much should you be making ideally for this company? I'm not saying you need to do that target. That's another thing. Remember, rebel, so I don't like it. But it is useful to know because it allows you to have a much more controlling influence on what is done with that budget. So if you know, for instance, that in the worst case scenario, you're working for one of those companies that only has £500 per person per year, it is useful to know what amount of that is left over each year and is unused, so that you can be the person that goes, well, I still have this one security course that I need to do. And I know that, John, Peter, and Tom did not use their budget this year. So come on, give it to me and we'll make sure it's used. Can do? Well, that's the point. If you don't know, you will never have this conversation.
Right.
So this is my tip. At least understand, whether good or bad, how your company does this, because it gives you so much more control. End of my
end of rant.
No, but it's such a thing. Like I get these young consultants and they're like, I have to do all these trainings, but I'm at my client, and they feel very, very engaged with their clients. They're like, they feel part of the team, and that's brilliant. But that means they also feel they need to put in 40 hours a week the entire year, like say vacations, they feel they need to do that. But once they understand, well, hey, your benchmark is, I don't know, 88% or 83, whatever it is for them, that starts to give them something to play with themselves, where they can be like, well, maybe I put in 36 hours the entire month of June. And at the end of the year, that means I'll still hit the 87%, but I will have done the training in at least some of it in work time. Because what I see them do, unfortunately, is that they'll do all their trainings outside of office hours. And at some point, you get the trouble that it's too much. And fair enough. I mean, how can you work only 40 hours and do the trainings and the rest of the time? And just understanding the system gives them options.
So you've taken the time but you've taken the time to understand the system.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. Nobody really, I know very few people, and I've not really ever taken the time within my companies to understand the system. And I think that's probably a twofold thing of like, the company does not help you understand the system, particularly in consultancies. I've worked as a consultant, and I didn't understand the system there. But also, you don't take the time within your own life to understand what is available to you. It's still, I agree with the sort of like, there's a pot of money, and it's carved up to between 50 people, and 20 people take their budget. That's 20, that's 30 people's budget still available, and yet your £1,000, they're still saying no. Well, that's a load of bollocks. You've got a shitload of money left in the box. Let's use it. But also, it's our responsibility to use that budget. How much budget do I have? Well, I've got to use it. You should be using it. And that is personal responsibility. Take hold of your own career, take hold of your own learning and development. understand what is available to you and use it to the nth degree, push it to the edge, and then try and push it further.
I think that, and there's a quote here from Ben Dowen, who responded to our LinkedIn post. He tends to summarize things amazingly well, like shout out to Ben. He was saying, well, personal development, never ever on my own time, too extreme. This would have never left me room to develop Tester of the Day, by the way. Shout out to Tester of the Day on Twitter. It's awesome.
Yeah, keep the nominations coming in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Should I be supported to develop on the job during work hours? Absolutely, a lot of the time. Should these two never meet? No. There is always room for adjustments and having this balance. So I think he summarized it very well. Yes, there is sort of a middle ground here as well, but also, yeah, it should be a mix.
There's discipline as well, isn't there? Like, if you work in a place and you're lucky enough where they've said you have got X amount of time in your week when you are allowed to do these things, but you use that time always to catch up on work.
Yeah.
And then you've got like work creep and interpersonal development time. Like, doesn't that sort of contradict the benefits of having that ring fence time to do those things?
Phil is feeling very called out.
I think we've all been there.
I am feeling very called out, but actually I have developed a personal strategy for that. But yeah, I am one of those people that will feel guilty about having been distracted earlier in the day, and then we'll just work and work and work. And so recently the strategy has just been, at a certain time that I've agreed with myself, I just close the browser. Whatever I'm doing, I just click that X in the corner until everything is gone. And I'm not saying that will work for everyone, but it's been sort of like an emergency strategy for me.
I've seen a lot of people block time in calendars. Like there's a colleague of mine that has every morning from 8 to 10 a.m. just blocked for deep work, which is also development work. And that's a brilliant strategy. What do you use, Shey?
I agree. I do a little bit of the same. So I was going to talk about sort of improvement kata. So, like if you're sort of comes from the martial arts, where you sort of wake up every morning and you do like 10 kicks, 10 punches and a couple of push-ups or whatever, and every day you do that, that hones your skill. You can do a little every day and it becomes a lot. If you're doing half an hour a day, say like before you start work, just get up or before your stand-ups, like mine are like whatever 9:15, so 9 till 9:15, do some learning. You're sitting at your desk, you got your coffee, you're really not switched on. Why don't I do some learning? Why don't I read a blog? And same as the end of the day, your last half hour, come on guys, face it, you're doing bugger all. Your eyes on the door. So why don't you have your eyes on a blog? Why don't you do something that lets you learn?
There's an inbox calling my name, and the number just keeps going up.
There's a big X at the top of that browser, and you just hit it and walk away.
No, but it blinks and ploinks at me, Shey. It blinks and ploinks at me.
You see, you're beyond help then, Sanne. I'm sorry.
But this is preference again. No, I agree. But I love chunking, and for me that works very badly. Like those times in between meetings are basically lost to me. If I don't have a chunk of time, and I'm talking morning or afternoon or even day, I find it very hard to do little bits and dribs and drabs. I agree with you. It works. And some things I can do it, but for really learning and understanding, I need a whole afternoon just blocked to do that.
Yeah.
I'm actually super intrigued because shit, just as you said, like, oh, why don't you use the first 15 minutes of your day to read a blog? And I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, reading blogs is development. and I feel like an idiot for it, because I'm like, yes, of course it is, because I've been working on this wee project where I have to explain testing to some other people soon, and like I've been going through other people's blogs and reading what they say and like how can you explain the perfect bug report. And at that point, I saw it as work, because obviously, I'm preparing this thing. I need to read this to get good ideas. Like, of course, this is work. And then now, as you said, like, oh, read a blog and you become a better tester. I'm like, oh my God, yes, it's true. Why didn't I ever think of just doing these little things? Because I'm like, Sanne, I'm like, oh yeah, I have to do this entire Java course out. It's not really learning anything useful, is it? It's like, it's all or nothing with me.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
you
fair
can
enough.
just you can chunk it, and chunking it, I agree. There's a lot to be said for that. When you talk about developers and how long it takes them to get into the zone and then do be writing code, and if you interrupt them, it takes them 20 minutes to get back in. There's the same thing about sort of learning as well. If you want to do some deep learning, absolutely, you've got to chunk it and make that time. And you know what? I really think you should not be afraid to put some time in your calendar of 2 hours or 2.5 hours once a week, where you say, guys, I'm improving myself. And why
If you say it in that tone, though, like, guys, I'm just going
to go and improve myself. Yeah, baby. No, but it is that kind of thing of like, hey, I'm going to do some personal development time. And you know what? I challenge people, anybody who watches this now, is watching this now or later or whatever, try it once a week. Put 2 hours into your calendar any time of the day, and just do that, and block it out and do work, do personal development, and see if anybody notices. And if anybody does notice,
explain.
So explain. And if anybody has a problem about it, apologize. Take the Grace Hopper approach. It's easier to apologize than ask permission. Go and do it. You know what? You are making yourself better. You are making yourself better for your company, better for yourself, better for your mind, better for your body, better for your life. Go and do it.
Yes, and this especially to you youngsters out there, the younger testers that feel that they can't. Yes, you can, to quote Barack Obama. Yes, we can block deep work time, and we can have that personal development even without a budget, even without a company that's not helping us. And then, wait until somebody says no and apologize, and then just carry on. Yeah,
you're not gonna get fired for it.
Be intentional about it. Tell someone you're going to do it, and make sure that they hold you accountable on that sort of thing as well.
That works too.
Like
I'm going to do that, and I've done this when I've had colleagues who have been online when they've had a holiday day. I'm like, hey, no, you go holiday, go away.
Get your ass off that.
Hey, I see this is your time for that, but you're doing this thing now. What's going on? Like, have you rescheduled it? Do those things. Like, it's supportive, it's accountable, it helps us get better together. And sometimes we need people to nudge us and poke us in the right way.
Accountability partners is a great one as well. A great way to try.
Very conscious though that we're at the end of our time already.
Yeah, we have to round up. We're through. Yeah.
So thank you everyone who has joined us for this fine time today. Our next session, put it in your calendar, everybody, or your diaries, or your Filofax, whatever, is on the 28th of March at 10 a.m. Central European Time, 9 a.m. GMT. We're going to be talking about leadership. I guess leadership on testing, but let's just suggest it's just leadership all around. Please post about us on social media. We are 9 out of 10 testers on Twitter and on LinkedIn. Please follow us. Please like and subscribe on our YouTube.
Unless you think we're shit, then don't post us. Post
Oh no, post as well.
Feedback makes us grow, Veerle. It develops.
Yeah, it's true. But if you think we're shit, send us a DM.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, to the 9 out of 10 testers channel, not our personal individual ones. But on that note, you can find all of us on Veerle.
I'm at Witch of the Test on Twitter, and I'm linkedin.com/ what is it? IL? I don't know, / Veerle Verhagen. It's my full name. Find me on Twitter, it's easier.
Perfect. Shey.
And I am at Shey Mouse on Twitter, and then Shey Crompton on LinkedIn. I'm just search for SHEY, my name, and you'll pretty much find me because, hey, I'm one page of Google.
Sanne?
I'm at Simply Sanne on Twitter, and I'm also on LinkedIn /Simply Sanne.
And Hanna?
Yes, I'm at Hanna Schlander on Twitter, but I'm not very active there. So if you actually want to talk to me, you're probably better off just searching for Hanna Schlander on LinkedIn.
And I'm Kristofskia on everything. And once again, I apologize for the name. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And we will see you again next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.